We expected to make important discoveries. And I had no reason to question our purpose when the ships Miskatonic and Arkham left port. When our doomed expedition set sail, none of us could have imagined how completely it would fail. My own responsibility was to collect geological samples from beneath the ice with the remarkable drilling apparatus designed by Professor Frank Pabodi. The rocks I recovered were extraordinarily old. They had been buried long before Antarctica became the frozen continent we know today. We had been extracting samples for more than a week when our biologist, Professor Lake, came down to inspect the material. Lake picked up one of the rocks and suddenly cried out. He said that the markings were footprints. He was certain of it, and I could find no immediate reason to dispute him. The discovery presented an impossible problem. The impressions appeared to have been made before any known animal with feet had evolved.
I cannot allow it.
Lake and I discussed the matter at length. He wanted to search nearby deposits for additional evidence, believing that the rocks to the northwest offered the best opportunity. He took half of our party and set out in that direction. Their search for more fossils did not proceed as expected. The engine of Moulton's aircraft malfunctioned and forced him to land. The party established a camp near an enormous mountain range that had suddenly appeared ahead of them. Majestic, unfamiliar, and unlike anything previously recorded. The mountains stood against a landscape illuminated by a strange golden red light. Lake's group surveyed the range and attempted to estimate the height of its peaks. They also observed that the ice in the area was unusually thin. After drilling and blasting, a section of the ground collapsed beneath them.
Aurora. Do you read me?
Lake reported his discovery by radio while exploring a cavern within the ancient frozen earth. He described dozens of specimens scattered across the floor along one side of the chamber of fossilized forms measuring 8 feet or more in length.
This is
recovered
incredible,
14
Professor.
of the strange organisms that we later called the Elder Things.
It's unlike anything we've ever
They had
seen.
barrel-shaped bodies, membranous wings, star-shaped heads, and triangular appendages resembling feet. After they were brought into the camp, the specimens slowly began to thaw in the warmer air. Lake attempted to dissect one of them, but the procedure did not go well. The dogs became uncontrollable when they caught the scent of the creatures. That evening, after making plans for our own flight westward, we exchanged farewells with Lake's party and retired for the night. Lake had promised to contact us again shortly after daybreak. As you already know, no further message ever came. When the continuing silence convinced me that something was wrong, we prepared and fueled an aircraft for a rescue mission. We took off with all possible speed. During the flight, I studied the immense mountains dividing the frozen wilderness. Among the peaks, perhaps because of some peculiar refraction of light, hundreds of geometric forms became visible. At first, I was convinced that the vision was an illusion or a product of exhaustion. It could not possibly be real. At least, that was what I told myself. When we finally reached Lake's camp in the spare aeroplane, we encountered a scene so deranged and horrifying that ordinary language cannot properly describe it.
We allures.
We saw things that we knew could never be revealed to the public. We agreed that the truth would have to be concealed. We invented a conventional explanation and reported that the camp had been destroyed by a violent gale. The actual events of that night have been withheld to spare the public from terror. I am telling you now because another expedition is being planned. I urge you to abandon it. Leave that frozen continent, its brutal climate, and its buried secrets alone. With profound disgust and reluctance, I must describe what we found at Lake's camp. It was impossible to determine exactly what had happened. Equipment was missing, tents had been damaged, and the entire camp was in chaos. The men and dogs had been torn apart, their bodies had been dissected and preserved with salt where they had slept. When we counted the dead, one man was absent, Gedney was missing, and under the circumstances, his disappearance seemed deeply suspicious. We searched the entire area near the base of the mountains. We discovered 6 graves that had recently been dug. Inside each grave lay the body of an elder thing. Yet we remained men of science. Despite the horror surrounding us, we could not ignore the mountains beyond the camp or the opportunity to investigate them. A reconnaissance aircraft had already reported unusual shapes across the peaks, visible in countless ridges, openings, and sheltered depressions. On the following flight, Danforth and I crossed the mountains to investigate. Beyond them, we discovered a vast plateau that had remained hidden from the modern world. Upon that plateau stood a city, partially buried beneath ice and snow. The city was ancient beyond comprehension, impossibly large, and evidently abandoned in some remote age of the earth. Its colossal petrified structures bore the symbols and architectural patterns of a vanished race. In places where water had once flowed, strange rows of towering columns still remained. We concluded that we had to land and document the Antarctic city as thoroughly as possible.
This city is
After
far
touching
older
down,
than we imagined. The compass is
we saw
pointing
that a
directly toward-
5-pointed structure was within walking distance from above. The building resembled a star. Over millions of years, snow had entered and filled much of the structure, preventing us from reaching the lower chambers. Large sections of the city had been sealed in the same way, with clear ice filling passages, pits, and interior spaces. Danforth and I walked through the city searching for an entrance that might allow us to explore more deeply. As we moved among the remnants of that prehistoric world, I began to fear that Danforth was losing control of himself. While we passed through streets bordered by cyclopean stone, I sensed that his nerves were under even greater strain than my own. He insisted that he could see a faint trail across the ground. He also claimed that a distant musical sound was echoing through the ruins.
Untouched.
Eventually, we reached a wall pierced by a wide opening. It offered access to the interior of the city. We were frightened naturally, but we forced ourselves forward and descended into the structures below. The upper rooms were still illuminated by daylight. As we traveled downward, the lights slowly disappeared. To mark our route through the maze, we dropped scraps of paper at regular intervals. Those crude markers were our only assurance that we might find our way back. We found windows and doorways sealed with petrified wood. We recorded every detail we could. We also took photographs until our film was exhausted. I am grateful for those images. Without them, no rational person would accept my account. The walls were covered with elaborate carved reliefs. Their meaning contradicts almost everything modern science believes about the history of life on this planet. I cannot recount every detail here, but I will explain what I can. Entire geological ages were recorded on those walls. What they revealed was astonishing and horrifying. For now, I will give you only the central outline. If my complete findings are ever published, you will be able to study the details for yourself. Hundreds of millions of years ago, The old ones crossed interstellar space and descended to Earth. After arriving, they began constructing cities in the deepest parts of the ancient oceans. They did not use tractors, cranes, or mechanical labor of the kind we understand. Instead, they created and controlled living organisms whose minds could be directed through hypnotic or telepathic influence. These creatures were enormous masses of protoplasm. Their amorphous bodies possessed many temporary green eyes and could reshape themselves as required. They are called Shoggoths in certain forbidden accounts, including the writings attributed to the mad Arab Abdul al-Hazred. Later, when the Elder Things required new sources of food, they began creating additional forms of life. They combined chemicals in carefully measured proportions, agitated the mixture, and introduced an electrical or biological catalyst. Through this process, they generated primitive life in the darkness of the ancient oceans. Some organisms were created for labor, others were bred as food. Among the latter was a simian creature valued for its meat. Those primitive animals survived because they were useful, manageable, and generally ignored over immense spans of time. Their descendants evolved into the creatures that eventually produced humanity. As the Elder Things' underwater cities became overcrowded, they expanded onto dry land. For a time, their civilization flourished. Then the star spawn of Cthulhu arrived from space. A war began for control of the Earth. The two species fought with extraordinary force, but neither could completely defeat the other eventually. The conflict ended in a negotiated division of the planet. The exact terms were not entirely clear from the carvings, but the agreement appeared to be this. The Elder Things would withdraw to their oldest settlements, including their Antarctic cities and their domains beneath the sea. In exchange, those territories would remain under their control. The star spawn were granted possession of a newly emerged continent in the region that would eventually become the Pacific Ocean. The pre-human servants or offspring of Cthulhu accepted this arrangement and established themselves upon the new land. The beings associated with Cthulhu are no longer visibly active, at least so far as we know. Their stone city, Ali, lies beneath the ocean. Then an unexpected problem emerged. The Shoggoths ceased to obey. After performing labor for millions of years, the creatures had developed memory, independent thought, and some primitive understanding of freedom. They learned to resist commands eventually. They rebelled. The Elder Things suppressed the uprising with weapons described in the carvings as forms of molecular or anti-molecular force. The Shoggoths were forced back into submission, but the rebellion marked a permanent change in their relationship with their creators. The Elder Things' next major conflict began when the Mygo arrived on Earth. The Elder Things barely survived that struggle. The war revealed an irreversible weakness in their species. Long residence on Earth had caused their membranous wings and space-traveling abilities to deteriorate. Their attempt to expand northward was halted by repeated Mygo attacks. Eventually, the Elder Things were driven from the northern lands and confined primarily to Antarctica and the ocean depths. As ages passed and Antarctica became colder, the remaining Elder Things could no longer escape into space. They withdrew through into a deep subterranean abyss where liquid water and geothermal warmth remained, while ice gradually consumed the city above. At that point in our investigation, the carvings became incomplete, and Danforth and I could only speculate about the final fate of the civilization. Then we detected a faint odor of gasoline.
I think it's gasoline. Look.
The smell indicated that someone from our expedition had recently passed through the area.
Looks like we found their base camp.
We followed the vapor until we reached a chamber containing a makeshift campsite.
From our camp.
It was clear that whoever had spilled the gasoline had encountered a blockage of fallen stone.
All of our supplies are scattered.
Back.
We must find another way.
We followed the return path and entered a vast cylindrical chamber. A broad spiral ramp wound upward along its walls. Numerous smaller passages opened from the sides at regular intervals. At the bottom of the ramp stood an abandoned sled.
This must be
Near the upper portion of the chamber, we found Gedney's body. A sled dog had been preserved beside him. We concluded that both had been collected and stored as specimens for examination.
You hear
The
that,
discovery
Danforth?
horrified us.
It sounds like
Before we could
penguins.
decide what to do, we heard a sound in the passages beyond. The noise resembled the cries of birds. Soon afterward, we encountered penguins, but they were unlike any normal Antarctic species. They were albino, completely blind, and in some cases nearly 6 feet tall. We concluded that something had frightened them from a deeper region beneath the city. Their movement helped us determine which passage to follow. The tunnel we chose was relatively clear of debris. Its walls were covered with increasingly elaborate carvings. Some sections descended at severe angles. As we traveled downward, two distinct odors mingled.
We must
and
push
grew
on,
stronger.
Danforth.
We eventually entered
still
a
hear it.
hemispherical
This scale
chamber
is beyond
carved with
anything we
star-like
need.
designs.
Look at these glyphs. They are pre-human.
From there,
Glyphs. They are
the
pre-human.
route toward a deeper abyss was unmistakable. Foul vapor assaulted us, and the temperature increased with every step.
It is far too hot in here.
It became so
cannot
warm that we
breathe.
unfastened our outer clothing.
Steady,
We
Danforth.
also became aware of the
Sir,
distant
do you
cries
smell
of
that?
penguins echoing
It is
from
the
far
stench of the
below.
mountains. The
A
air is
thick
changing,
vapor gathered
Danforth.
in the air. The
God,
odor
what a
became
foul
almost
smell.
impossible to endure. When the mist
Must
briefly
proceed with
thinned,
absolute
we
caution.
saw a horror neither of us had
What could have
expected.
done this to them?
Several dead elder things lay on the floor. We believed that 8 elder things had been missing from their graves at Lake's camp, but only 4 bodies were present. Despite everything that had happened, I felt genuine sorrow when I saw them. After remaining frozen beneath the snow for millions of years, they had awakened in a world they did not recognize. And something had decapitated them and covered their bodies with slime. Danforth suddenly released a scream brought on by unbearable terror. Beyond the pale mist, something answered him.
We have to move faster!
We immediately
Don't look
began
back.
to retreat. Neither of us spoke. The thing moved toward us so rapidly that we could feel changes in the air pressure.
It is getting closer.
We knew that other elder things were
We need to
still
keep moving.
unaccounted for, and the possibility that they were pursuing us drove us forward.
It's getting closer!
Despite our
Don't look
exhaustion,
back!
we eventually looked back
The
into
fog
the
is right
mist.
behind us.
The shape that emerged was not an elder thing.
Run!
It remains difficult to describe what
moving.
appeared from the darkness. The nearest comparison is a
moving.
subway train advancing through a tunnel. The same comparison occurred independently to both Danforth and me. The creature filled the passage as it approached. It produced a sickly green internal luminescence and consisted of a chaotic mass of shifting biological material. Temporary mouths opened and vanished across its surface. Eyes formed, stared, and dissolved as Shoggoth was pursuing us. In a state of complete panic, we ran. We forced our way through the giant penguins, hoping their bodies might obstruct the creature and conceal our escape. The Shoggoth crushed the birds as it advanced. Their cries followed us through the tunnels.
We must keep moving!
We retraced
Wait
our
for me.
path until we reached the
almost
spiral
there.
ramp
I
and
can't
climbed
keep
by
this
the
up.
light of our
Look,
electric
There's
lamps.
light ahead. Don't look
We
back.
emerged into the pale Antarctic
We must reach
midnight
the
sun
aeroplane.
from the entrance.
Come on,
It was
we're
only a
almost
short
there.
distance to the
All
aeroplane.
systems are green, Captain.
After takeoff, I relieved
Generating
Danforth
full
at the
power.
controls because his
Copy
mental
that.
condition
Engaging
had
thrusters now.
deteriorated badly. As we crossed the mountains, he looked back. Something on the distant horizon filled him with a terror more extreme than anything he had shown beneath the city. The peculiar atmosphere above the polar plateau appeared to function like a lens, refracting and magnifying something beyond the known mountains.